If you're someone who wants to dive deep and try to find the meaning or emotional learning attached to your misophonia, you might be wondering, how do I do that? Ideally, you work with a therapist who's trained in a memory reconsolidation model. This is because when such meanings or learnings are formed, they're typically emotionally painful, and so your ego will have found strategies to bury it. So working with a therapist who can create a safe space and also has tools and techniques for working with your internal protective parts can be really helpful in doing that discovery work. But if you don't have access to that type of support right now, and if you feel resourced enough to do some of that discovery work yourself, I have a couple ideas for you. First idea is journaling. Journaling about early experiences of just annoyance or being bothered by your first trigger sound. So trying to go back even before it had that hijack experience, trigger experience for you. And just getting really curious, what was the context in your life at that time? First, what was taking place for stressors? Were you going through puberty? Was there a move? Were you dealing with harsh inner self-talk, rejection, death? What sort of things were putting your nervous system in a defensive state and also narrowing your window of tolerance? Secondly, getting curious about what was your point of view or perspective at that time in life. For example, what were you believing about why the sound was feeling like a lot? Perhaps you believed that the person doing it was intentionally trying to upset you. Or perhaps you believed that you were weird or something was wrong about you, that you were even being bothered by the sound. If you didn't do or say anything to support your body, why was that? What, at that time in your life, what did you anticipate might happen if you said something or did something? And perhaps you didn't even have any tools for supporting your body, such as breathing deeper or using cold or putting on background noise. So just getting curious about what was underneath the way you dealt with it. If you did say or do something, what was the response of those around you? Perhaps the person who was making the sound took it personally and got defensive. Maybe they even said something that was shaming. And how did you process that? Did you internalize it? Journaling about such questions and topics can help you get in touch with what you learned emotionally in that experience and what now may be associated with the sound. Another strategy to consider is to track situations in which you're more easily triggered and also situations in which maybe you don't get triggered or you get less activated. And just starting to identify the themes of the pieces of context that are involved. So for example, maybe when you're outside or in a larger area where there's more options for getting space, you don't struggle as much. And that might point to your deeper learning is something to do with helplessness. If we put it into words, it might be something like, this sound means I'm headed for helplessness. So when there's evidence that there's a low chance of you ending up helpless, that learning doesn't get activated and projected onto the situation. Another example is maybe in situations where you're around people that you really feel like you can be yourself with. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, you feel safe to say something, you're not worried about them getting defensive, then your emotional learning might be more along the lines of, my feelings don't matter and I must just endure the discomfort I'm experiencing. So again, when there's strong evidence that your feelings do matter and you have options for agency if you're uncomfortable, that learning does not get activated and projected onto the situation or the sounds when they're happening in that environment. There's a chapter in my book called Context Matters, which lists a number of these type of factors that can be influencing how your nervous system is processing the trigger sound. And again, can be clues to identifying that deeper meaning or learning attached to your trigger. If you haven't already, I hope you'll check out my book, Demystifying Misophonia, where I share a lot more information and context about what I'm talking about here today.